All right, we want to welcome everybody here today. I'm Laura Baker from the Rockton Chamber of Commerce. This is Mickey from the Roscoe Chamber, and this is Randall from the Beloit Chamber. And we've invited the members to come here and ask Congressman Don Manzullo all their questions. So here he is.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. It's been an interesting day. I just came from a meeting with about 9 or 10 small factory owners over in Elkhorn. People that had come up from northern Illinois and different areas around there. And for about an hour and a half we chatted, tried to answer some of the questions, but most of the time I just sat there and I took notes, which is fine with me because I'm really interested to know what's on your hearts and what's on your minds. I'm glad that the vegetable season has passed, because that way probably nobody has any fresh tomatoes that they can throw at me. But although this is the pumpkin season, you know, those little gourds can get pretty hard.
Tomatoes would be softer.
That could be. It could be.
Pumpkin pie would be better.
It is. I thought I would just take a couple of minutes and give you a background on what we've been doing, what I've been doing personally, and then open it up for your comments. But don't do this to me. When I open up for comments, please, you have to have questions. I mean, it reminds me one time I was in a 4th or 5th grade class, and the teacher said, well, the kids have lots of questions. And I got there, and it was almost 30 minutes of silence. I think the kids probably were asking the question, why are you here? And we're not interested in listening to you. They were very polite. They just didn't have any questions. So I had to make some small talk for about a half an hour, and I don't plan on doing that here. I serve on 2 committees. I serve on the Financial Services Committee, and the subcommittees on which I serve deal with the stock market, with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, so-called government-sponsored enterprises, international economic policy, and banking and consumer credit. So it's most of financial service, everything except insurance on it. But I'm also on the Foreign Affairs Committee, where I chair the subcommittee on Asia and the Pacific. About a third of the world is within our portfolio. Obviously it involves China, the rest of Asia, Japan, all the islands, the different territories spread throughout the Pacific. But I spend most of my time on manufacturing issues. We have the best guess in Winnebago County is somewhere around 2,000 factories. Nobody really knows, and that's okay, because there are people that are working out of the garage that are working full time, and sometimes they grow into minor companies such as Apple or Microsoft, and obviously the larger companies. But our area is obviously heavily industrialized. 25% of the people in Winnebago County actually work in manufacturing. So it's a very, very intense manufacturing area. McHenry County, which is the easternmost part of our congressional district, it has a 17% industrial base, which means 17 out of 100 jobs are directly involved in manufacturing. You wouldn't know that. Some people think it's a suburb area of Chicago, which it isn't. And McHenry County has over 600 factories. Some of the finest plastic companies in the world are located in McHenry County. That happens to be their specialty. So I got involved. I've always been involved in manufacturing ever since I've been a member of Congress. And 8 years ago, Congressman Tim Ryan, who's a Democrat from Ohio, and I formed the Manufacturing Caucus. It was started as a direct result of our experience on the Small Business Committee, which I chaired at the time. Tim has one of 3 remaining titanium companies in the United States in his congressional district, and the 3 titanium companies in America were in the process of possibly going out of business. And titanium is sort of important when it comes to manufacturing. especially aerospace and high tech. So Tim and I had originally scheduled a hearing, and then at the request of leadership, the hearing turned into a huge meeting, which was even better, of probably 50 or 60 people from throughout the titanium industry, including people involved in manufacturing it, people from Pratt & Whitney, different aircraft companies, all the armed services were present there, for the purpose of trying to figure out what are we going to do to make sure there's a sufficient supply of titanium for both the commercial and military lines, and at the same time ensure that we have adequate titanium resources domestically, because it's obviously a very important metal. The last thing we would need is to be dependent upon a foreign country for titanium. And that's where the idea of which came up. There's a law called the Berry Amendment that says if you're using titanium and other metals, particular metals, for military application, they have to come from America. Well, Boeing makes aircraft, not only military, but also commercial. And you can't have two separate lines in figuring which pot did the titanium come from. So it was a very, very good compromise that saved the American titanium industry, mixes in some foreign titanium, and we got that issue resolved. But that was the first project that Tim and I got involved in. And I can tell you about other projects in it, but I'm really anxious to hear from you. What I like to do is, why don't you go around and introduce yourself, and if you're with a business, or you're retired, or if you're retired and working on 15 boards, and which is quite possible. Go ahead.
My name is Gary Bach. I'm the owner and operator of an insurance agency here in Rockton, Gary J. Bach Insurance Agency. And one of the questions I have for you, Don, is you know, you and I have met several times previously. I know that when you first ran for Congress, you had ran on term limits. And one of the questions that I have is that, could you possibly get on those committees that are so instrumental, your finance committee or any of those other ones, with being a first term or even a second term congressperson? The
answer is no, but if I could pick that up after we go around. Okay. Rich, can you give me a pen that works? Oh, thank you. But this got Gary Bach. Oh, hey, this is an outtake. It does. Gary J. Bach Agency, Rockton, Illinois. You bet. Looks as though that was planned, huh, Gary? You bet. Okay, Harold. There you are. Yeah, this works very nicely too.
Harold Nelson.
But do you have a pen?
Yes.
Oh, you got this one. All right. I'll be doing more writing than you. Go ahead, Harold.
I'm Harold Nelson.
Thank you.
I'm a retired electrician for about the last 7 years, and I'm just enjoying retirement after working hard and watching the whole economy change through the years and what's happened. You know, I'm over 70 years old, and I grew up in a Republican household, and I watched how the Republican Party has changed over the years, and I saw what happened to the Republican Party in the city of Rockford, Winnebago County, state of Illinois, and I'm very upset with what's going on, and I just thought, you know, I'm retired, I can start coming around and listen a little bit more. I've known Congressman Manzullo for quite a long time. I had a lot of friends that were active in politics and everything, and so we'd always make it to his fundraisers and things like that. And I'm just taking an interest because I don't like what I'm seeing on TV and listening to some of this stuff, and I'm really worried about this country and manufacturing in particular.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Kurt?
Yeah, my name is Kurt Tillman, and I own a kit cart. We're located in Rockford and in the process of developing some property up in South Hawaii.
Okay. So Kid Cars is yours, huh?
Yes, I'm Kid Cars, and we're trying to develop some property right now and expand the business in South Hawaii.
Good for you.
Hi, I'm Christy Katowski. I'm just a private citizen, stay-at-home mom currently. And I have questions for you about how The closure of the Harrison Street office is going to affect.
Closure of,
The Harrison post office.
okay, okay, all right,
Going to help even quicker.
okay,
It's going to hurt the area small businesses.
okay.
I'm Don Martin, her father, and retired postal worker. I was a postmaster in Stillman Valley for quite a few years. I've been to Don's office in Washington, D.C. about 5 or 6 times. The post office always goes and I hate to say lobby, but we try to influence our local congressman on bills that are in Congress, and I just want to find out his views on H.R. 2309.
But you gotta tell me what that is.
That's
Is that the prepaid pension?
That's the Darrell, no, the other one you sponsored, 18.
Right.
Yeah, you co-sponsored that one.
Okay,
Yeah, this is the one that will actually kill the post office. It's 23. It's sponsored by Darrell
Okay.
a Republican of California, and
That's-
it's been reported to the floor
okay,
already. And that's a very dangerous bill. That's the one that will double from 1 billion to 2 billion. The closure of mail processing facilities, including Rockford, and it would virtually be the death of the postal service as we know it.
okay.
Okay.
Well, that's an easy one. All right.
My name is Randall Upton, I'm the president of the Greater Beloit Chamber of Commerce. And then as much as we have members that extend down into Rockford, East Esmond Park, South Beloit, Rockton, Roscoe, we take a regional approach, and I'd like to hear your views always on issues. We are going to be spending this afternoon together at the Rotary Center in Beloit. I'm hosting the export seminar that you and Tammy Baldwin have been able to arrange, talking about the importance of exports and job creation in the region.
I'm Marlis Mills. I'm retired from the Rockford School District, where I worked as a guidance counselor and social worker. And I'm really concerned about where the jobs are going to come for all these kids that are attending our schools right now. And I'm wondering how these trade agreements are going to affect jobs for our kids, and also are more jobs going to go overseas because of these agreements.
Okay.
I'm Holly Hughes. I'm with Edward Jones in Roscoe office, and I'm here to have a listening ear, definitely on more of the important programs and initiatives that are taking place for small businesses in the area. Prior to Edward Jones, I was a small individually owned franchise with my family, and so I'm growing to understanding the difficulties like running a small business and taxation and so forth. So now, as I'm on the other side of the coin, meeting with a lot of small business owners, I think it helps me to be more educated, to be able to come to them and say, this is where you continue to get fed, and this is what they're implementing. In particularly, I like what you're, or I like what I'm reading about, really expanding upon something like GE Aviation and being able to give local manufacturers the opportunity to increase their knowledge on providing jobs for the aviation community or sector, as well as the government sectors. How do they get those jobs? How can we spread out, I guess, the wealth in a sense to other manufacturers? And then on the flip side, kind of bouncing off what Arliss has said here, it seems to me, I just had a local seminar, and there were, I don't know, about 30 folks there, and a lot of them, some of them were retired, a lot of local Pullman retirees, a lot of them are, still within the machine shops. And there seems to be this mentality of, maybe my generation and before, or even folks that are out of jobs, that have a hard time finding skilled individuals. And so what kind of is being done to help, give these, unemployed individuals, or, maybe they're employed, but it's not where they want to be, opportunities to advance their skill set without having to spend, too much money, obviously, on maybe these skills.
Holly, your last name again is?
Muth. I'm like marrying you, I feel like Tom Dean.
M-U-T-H.
Yeah.
Muth. Okay.
a real estate broker. I've worked in this area since 1974. I think the biggest concern is depreciating values.
It's Joan or Joanne?
Johanna,
Oh, Johanna, neither one, okay. And then Johanna, your last name again?
K-O-S is in Sam, L-O-F is in Frank, S-K-I.
Kozlowski? Okay. Okay.
I'm Deborah Wisniewski. I'm treasurer of the Roscoe Chamber.
Nobody named Smith around here, you know, have you noticed that? Man.
Another one.
Wisniewski, okay, I got that. Are you president of,
No, treasurer of the Roscoe Chamber.
okay, treasurer, okay,
Own a couple of car washes in the area,
okay.
and I do relocation for American dwellings. And what I'm starting to see a lot, like Johanna said, is the not only the depreciation values, but now I'm glad that you are on a couple of financing committees, because what I'm seeing is the lending restrictions right now.
Mm-hmm.
We have people moving to the area, transferring in. None of them will buy right now. Number one, they want to rent because of home values, but number two, they can't qualify anymore. And being a rural area that we're in, if it's zoned agriculture, if it's more than 5 acres, very few banks are willing to lend any money on that. A lot of the people can't even refinance their houses right now because of those restrictions that Fannie and Freddie have put on. And the local lenders, although they all like to be a local community and local lenders, they still won't do the in-house loans because of the restrictions that Freddie and Fannie put on. They don't want to take that risk. So a lot of the appraisal restrictions have gone on, especially since the Dodd-Frank bill that started. A lot of issues on that end. I think that I'd really like to get out in the open a little bit more and see what's going to stick and what's going to change. Thanks, David.
I'm the Highway Commissioner for Rockland Township, Matt Kyle. I just wanted to hear the question and answers that are going on. It all affects us tax-wise and the tax base always affects the townships. I just wanted to see what the community leaders had to say about what was going on. We know what's going on, and I'd like to see the answers to it. So it's just a question and answer.
You just want some more money so you can fix the roads.
I would ask for that.
It's really great using a GPS on the difference of Black Hawk Drive and Black Hawk Boulevard. Turn right, turn left, turn right, run. No, dummy! Turn around and go back the other way, you know? That was quite an exercise, Rich, but the lady on the GPS got me through.
Right.
Yeah, that happened.
Well, I'm not a Smith either. It's Nikki Heinzeroth.
Okay.
And I'm the director of the Roscoe Chamber of Commerce, and I'm concerned about business and jobs in the area. And personally, and I do live in the area, so personally I'm concerned about cuts in like law enforcement, education. I'm concerned with cutting the wrong things.
Mm-hmm. I know, Brenda. Yes.
And I am the village clerk in Rockton, and I'm also the school board president of the Rockton School District. And my husband is an engineer at Chrysler.
Mm-hmm.
He's grateful for all of the bailout and the turnaround that Chrysler has made over the last few years. And in fact, they just signed a new contract in the process of doing that with the union, and they're doing quite well.
Okay.
It's a success story. I'm very concerned about the number of foreclosures that I see come into my office. We get reports every time a new foreclosure. I had 3 in just the last few days. And about just the business coming into the area. Fortunately, Rockton, unlike the Rockford area, has been attracting business.
Yes.
Not in our school district, but in the Rockton village. In fact, we just approved the Casey's building going across from Walmart. We are doing fairly well for the local village.
Good. Mike?
I'm Mike Greenlee. I'm the superintendent of Rockton School District, and I don't have questions, but for me, it's more of an opportunity for me to understand the economic impact here of our businesses and community, because ultimately that affects us in the school district as well.
Okay. Well, I guess I misspoke. There are some questions here, okay? Let me
You got to the left.
Huh?
To your left. A couple other people.
Oh, I'm sorry. There we go.
That was all right.
There, go ahead.
I'm here, as most of you are, just to be informed in what's going on. I work with a lot of low-income households. In my position at Rockland Township, we do the LIHEAP applications for the Northern Illinois area here. And I'm seeing a lot of what I call the new poor, 48 and above. They're not getting rehired. They're running out of unemployment. They're selling their dining room tables. I'm very concerned as to what the answer is and what we have for these individuals who have thus far been the ones that primarily supported the system. They are the workers, they are the middle class, and we don't have answers for them. And I'm really concerned with the cuts that are being made to the social services programs, because when they've supported it their whole life, now we're telling them, I'm sorry, but we're closing our doors. And so I'm really concerned about what we're going to offer them. And that's primarily what I'm interested in.
Sharon, your last name again?
Hecox, H-E-C-O-X.
Okay.
Tom Gensius, I'm the Rockton supervisor for Rockton Township. I'm glad that we were able to host this meeting for you today at our town hall. And on a personal level, I'm a rural letter carrier out of the Beloit Post Office.
Okay. Way in back. Hi. Well, why don't you come over here so we can... You don't have to hide back there. All right, whatever you want to do, it's up to you.
My name is Catherine Hilbert. I'm getting involved in politics now. I am with Occupy Rockford, and I'm just speaking from Milton.
Catherine, your last name again?
Hilbert.
Hilbert. H-I-L-B-E-R-T?
H-I-L-L-E-B-E-R-T. Have to be different.
Well, to Wisniewski over there, I'll call you Smith. Is that okay? Okay. And then...
I'm Jerry Noller. I work for Rockton Township. I'm a cemetery sexton. I'm really the person nobody wants to see, but I am here just to listen.
Okay. Your last name again is Noller?
N-O-L-L-E-R.
Noller, okay.
And it is also an honor to meet you.
Well, nice to meet you. Okay, well, this is... you're with the media, okay? All right. Let's talk about the postal issue first, okay? You all know what happened 5 years ago in June, when the post office decided to close the sorting station in Rockford. And at that time, we met with Kelly from the Postal Carriers Union. I don't think she was the head of the union at the time. But I know the fellow who used to deliver to our office, Rick. Yeah. And the fellow who wears shorts year-round. And actually delivers to our congressional office on Mulford. But it was very interesting because I met with the post office postmaster general. And I said, what's the story on Rockford? He said, well, you know, we have to cut. And I said, we understand that. I was extraordinarily impressed with the scholarship of the people there at the Postal Union, working in the Rockford office. Incredible statistics as to the efficiency of the sorting station. Anywhere in the 610 area code, which runs from the Mississippi River all the way through, is it Boone County? Through Boone County, all those counties in there. The only place in the world, not in the world, the only place that I know where you're guaranteed overnight service. You put the letter in the mail, supporter, okay? All right. There you are. And I didn't know you were here, not a Frank, a real, you want to feel that stamp? Go ahead, feel it. There he is, a real stamp. That's a forever stamp, you bet. I sat down with Jack Potter, who's the Postmaster General, and Jack had actually started as a carrier. as a letter carrier. So he worked his way all the way through, and really one of the most respected administrators in Washington.
One of the first that came through that.
What's that?
One of the first that came through the ranks.
That's correct, and a very unusual person because he was the only person I know to be the head of a major agency where nobody really criticized. I mean, this was an extraordinarily public servant, and Jack retired. Now he's the head of running Dulles and Washington Reagan Airport. Just a minor job after they figured anybody could run the post office, can keep those airplanes straight.
Into the fire, huh?
Into the fire, and we showed him the statistics as to the efficiency of the sorting center in Rockford. What would happen if that were shifted into the suburbs? That it would overload the suburbs, would not make any sense, and really wouldn't save any money. Jack agreed with me. The day that we held the meeting was in June. That's the day that my wife came down with cancer, and so I actually had to miss the meeting to fly back to Washington to be with her. She's doing just fine. So we succeeded in keeping open the sorting center, and I've stayed in contact with Jack when he was there. The fellow who's there now, I think his name is O'Donnell, is that it? Donahue. Was Jack's administrative assistant, or second in line. And so we've always been in contact with the post office, anticipating somewhere along the line that the sorting center would again come under scrutiny. It has again, and now they want to shift the sorting to Madison, if indeed the plan goes through. And Rich,
study right now.
It's in the process of a study, and I know that Kelly and the folks there at the Postal Union are again putting together all the figures to show how extraordinarily efficient this sorting center is here in northern Illinois. You can't get much better than one-day service, plus what the folks do at the center there in Rockford is every night the docks are cleared. They'll stay there overtime to make sure that obviously there's no first-class mail, but no third-class mail is there either. They just completely clear the docks so there's nothing left outside. And you don't find that type of dedication in some areas across the country. So we're going to do whatever we can, again, to keep the Senator open. On those two bills, I've not studied ICE's bill. It just came down as we were leaving Washington to come back. Rich, I need some water. Could you thank you. As we were leaving Washington to come back, so I'll study the thing and try to find out what's in it. The other bill, the post office is the only agency that I know of that's required to pay their pension 7 years in advance. Your pension, 7 years in advance. And so I've always been opposed to that because it's not a good business model. And Kelly came in the office and said, Don, that bill is again in the hopper because it was there last Congress. We did not know it had been introduced yet. And so I said, let's get on the bill. And then about a week later, the Postal Carriers Union came out for a friendly supporting picket. And I like that. So I said, why are you picking the congressman's office? Because he supports the bill. Okay. But that's where we are on it. But I don't know what's going on with ICE's bill. It's your understanding it's been reported, ready to come to the floor?
It's been reported to the floor.
Okay.
It's on the floor.
Okay. Yes, on that.
Question regarding the post office situation.
Sure.
I heard on the radio, and I don't keep up with it, that they raised the price of stamps 1 cent.
Went from 44 to 45 cents, I heard.
Why don't they raise it to 50 cents, keep the post offices open? I think there's not hardly a person in this country that doesn't believe in the efficiency or the people that are in their postal system. I think if you had a vote, you'd have 96% or better in favor of the post office. And the trouble is with the post office right now is if you go in there, there's computer software equipment is so far outdated compared to FedEx and UPS, it's like a dinosaur. But the people are so good that they make it work. but their computer system needs to be trashed. It is so far antiquated. If it wasn't for the people being so good, they're an antique. They're a dinosaur. Their computer system. But the people are so good at it, they get everything done great, efficiently. And I think everybody likes the postal people. You know.
As a small business person, I would not be happy at all with a 6, 7, 8 cent increase in
Because it adds
postage.
up.
I'm still one of those antique businesses that use the U.S. Postal Service. And it has become either my second or my third number one expense. Companies all over the world want us to use the internet, but some of us still believe it is not the way to make touch with individuals. But a 7% or a 7 cent increase, oh, that's ridiculous. That's a buster.
This is like the
1%.
debate last night, huh?
Yeah.
On CNN, right? Not quite.
Well, I'll share this with you. I mean, I've been around for a number of years now, and when I started in the business, you know how much a postage stamp was? 6 cents. 6.
And the employees had to wait till the Senate pages got raises before they
You
got
know?
raised.
So the point I'm getting to is I can live with 1 cent at a time, but 1 cent, when I'm dealing with thousands of pieces of mail a day, it still adds up. And that's the one thing that the public doesn't understand, is that 1 cent or 1% of certain items accumulates over a period of time. It sounds like small stuff to a lot of people that don't do it, but for us that have to use it, it's a big number.
And business is the most important customer for the Postal Service. Business keeps the Postal Service.
And I'll
The
I'll
average
share
person
this
that
with you.
doesn't-
Our Rockton Post Office is one of the best in the whole wide world.
But
Those
let me-
guys and gals are fantastic.
Let me give you a little history of how the rate process works. There is a committee appointed by Congress, and I think it's a joint Congress.
It's a
and
postal rate commission.
Postal Rate Commission is appointed by.
I think that's correct.
And Congress,
Mhm.
right? Congress.
I'm not quite sure, but go ahead.
But that Postal Rate Commission has to hear testimony, not only from all of its customers, but from all of its competition. UPS gets to come into that rate commission and say, oh, we can't compete with that price, you can't raise the price of packages more than that. FedEx gets to come in and say, the post office can do overnight delivery, believe it or not, for $5. But they must charge $12 because the postal rate, the FedEx and UPS comes in and says, we can't compete with that price, it's unfair practice, you must charge this much for it. The other thing I think I'd like Congress to work on is Congress signing an exclusive agreement with FedEx for their overnight delivery service. I don't think that's quite fair to the Postal Service.
I can only go so deep on this, okay?
They really did.
Okay.
The other thing about computers in the post office, you know the scanner they use at all stores, the point of sale screen? The Postal Service paid IBM, National Cash Register, and one other company to develop that system. They developed that software at the cost of the United States Postal Service. Then they, in turn, got to sell that software to every little store that you see. I work at a golf course now, and we use the same system that I used at the post office as the postmaster. So that development is by the post office. Most of the sorting systems that you see in industry and the conveyor systems to move things around and the containers that they use to move things around on the airlines and everything else, development was paid for by the United States Postal Service.
Okay, let's go on to another equally uncomplicated issue, that of housing. Okay? No one asked me a question such as, what is your favorite color? You know? Or one kid asked me one time at an Oregon middle school, he said, but what is your favorite Starbucks coffee? Well, that was an interesting question, you know. He must have got the memo on the downtime. Make sure you ask questions, and so there'll be no downtime on it. On the financial services, I sit on the Financial Services Committee, and the one subcommittee one of the three I said on deals with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Back in 2000, I did not like the fact that too many people were buying homes that could not afford to make the first payment. It was scandalous. And any attempt to try to stop that was met with incredible resistance from people involved in the housing industry. So that was, I became a co-signer, co-sponsor of the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac reform bill. It was introduced and it went nowhere. 2005, the bill came up again. This one, again, tightening up the underwriting standards. And it came to the floor, and there was what's called the Royce Amendment, R-O-Y-C-E, after Congressman Royce of California, that would really tighten up the lending standards but not make them oppressive. Minor things, such as requiring proof of a person's earnings. So these wouldn't be called liar loans. And I think 70 or 80 of us out of 435 voted for that amendment. Amendment failed. I voted for the bill on final. It never went to the Senate. And also, when on the Financial Services Committee, we found a scandal had broken out at Fannie Mae where the person in charge had sent out this bogus survey. Rich, that was in 2005, wasn't it? Franklin Raines was the head of it. And we got these cards back from constituents saying, don't change anything with Fannie Mae. And so we started making phone calls as to why people had sent these postcards. Well, what had happened was the postcards weren't coming from them. They were being interviewed on the phone with a question, do you want anything to change in affordable housing? It was a question like that. And then their name was put on the card and sent in, and it was interesting because one congressman actually got a card from himself. So this whole thing was bogus. Franklin Raines was there, and you remember the scene in the movie Miracle on 34th Street? Is it 34th Street? Where are you going? Yeah, Miracle on 34th Street. Well, we brought in all these bags of postcards and dumped them on the table in front of him. He that year I think made $3 or $4 million. Everybody on Fannie Mae. I mean, this whole thing was in the process of collapsing. No one wanted to do anything about it, and so I was one of the people out there saying somebody has to do something. We're gonna see some disastrous consequences. Well, what happened was the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac do two things: is they would take loans from local banks and other lenders, collateralize them, put them in a group, and then sell them on the secondary market as a security. Or they will hold that themselves in their own portfolio. Both Presidents Bush and Clinton had urged Fannie Mae to buy up more of these so-called subprime or Alt-A loans, and to be even more generous in lending. And the reason that happened was housing became a right, and then it became an entitlement. So when the foreclosure started, then obviously these securitized bundles and collateralized debt obligations began to sour, and to me, that's what started the recession that we're in now. This is not a double-dip recession. This is one recession that's continued. Tell somebody out of work that the recession officially ended 2 years ago. You know, I dare you. And I think you agree with me. This is continuing. So that's where it started, with easy credit, with everybody having a right to buy a home, with people unwilling to put the brakes, and many times on their own profession. And so what happened is that's how that whole thing soured. Now all the programs that Congress and the President have come up with to try to save people in the foreclosure situation have failed. People, you can help somebody all you want who's in foreclosure. They really don't need help in foreclosure. They need help getting a job. I mean, that's the whole issue. It all goes back to jobs. Now there's some stink going on as to some major banks that really did not look at the foreclosure documents. Are you with me on that? And our office is continually working with some of those foreclosures, and we've had people tender to us. So here's a check for the balance of my mortgage payment or mortgage, and the bank won't respond. So we usually it's Pam Sexton in the office that gets on the horn and calls the banks and say, look, you've got to cut through all this red tape. When Americans get back to work, that will solve the housing problem. I mean, that has to happen first. It's to get more taxpayers, more people working, to put more of a demand, clean up the houses that are foreclosed, and then we'll eventually get back to building newer homes.
But in the interim,
go ahead.
Is that it's the pendulum swing too far?
It went too far. That's correct.
And so, is there anything in the works now to get that corrected? For example, with the appraisal laws, they just really tightened up on appraisals. It used to be where before the big housing boom,
right,
you could have an appraisal and it would be within a range,
right,
2, 3, 4% range, and that's still, no one can say exactly how much a house is worth to the penny. But what's happened now is it has to be, and it can be off by $3,000, and the bank will not do that loan based on the criteria that's just come down that change with the appraisal industry.
The problem, when I practiced law, I closed over 1,000 real estate loans, commercial, farm, residential. I worked a lot in that area, and we've been fighting this law on appraisers. That goes back about 10 years, where you can't have a local appraiser. You have to have somebody from outside the area. You might as well call them a crook with criterion like that. But what a local appraiser can do is, and I'm sure you agree with me, a local appraiser has a feel for the community. You have to be part of the community to feel it. A local appraiser will know what's going on with the school system. We live in the Byron School District, and you guys are up here in Rockton. I mean, we've got excellent schools, and that becomes a part of the appraisal. But the only person who knows that it's valuable is someone who's from the area. Local appraisers will know hearsay about a street being widened. There's nothing of record. No one knows anything about it, but a local appraiser will hear that and say, wait a second, there may be a problem here. This street is going to be widened. And when HHS said that to make sure you have an honest appraiser, you need somebody from outside the community, they're nuts. And you can fight them all you want. They're entrenched. There are 8 people that continue to work on HUD 1. The real estate firm, when I practiced law, the closing, it was one sheet for everybody. And now it's like this, and there's so many disclosures, nobody reads them. Why read it? If you don't sign them, you don't get the house. So what are we going to do? Negotiate with the federal government that you don't like this term and strike it out and put your initials on there? It doesn't work that way. So to see the collapse of the real estate industry, but I mean, the Fed has jurisdiction over most real estate loans. It wasn't until October 1st of 2008 when the Fed came out with a requirement that you needed written documentation of how much you earn. I mean, that's how loose it was. And the system was set up with FHA, as you know, that was ready for subprime borrowers. There's nothing wrong with subprime borrowers. It's just they did not have the full down payment. And to get an FHA, it was a lower down payment, but the people who got in paid a premium, an insurance premium, so in case there was a default in that portfolio, there'd be enough in there to keep it solvent. Well, now FHA is used for almost anything. It went way beyond its original purpose on it. Dodd-Frank was passed with no GSE reform. Zero. Nothing in there on that, and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are now picking up about 95% of the residential loans. So, where do you start in the midst of this? The president wants to reform GSE. There happens to be a lot of bipartisan support on this to try to break it into a lot of smaller pieces. You don't find too much arguing going on over that point. But in the interim, with the wipeout in real estate values, that will continue until America gets back to work. That's another question we could talk about later on. In fact, we sent you a handout there on 10 different points that we're presently working on getting America back to work. That gets updated virtually every day, depending upon the bills that come up. I had 9 points, and I said everybody's got 10 points. So we took 2 points or 1 point, we stretched it into 2 in order to get that done. Okay, let's see. Gary, on term limits, there were term limits under the Articles of Confederation. James Madison was not allowed to serve a third term. And it reached a certain point where they said all the people that know anything about government are term limited under the Articles of Confederation. So when the Constitution was drafted, that was purposely omitted. Originally when I ran, I said I was going to serve 6 terms and that's it. I found out that on the 6th term, that's when I became chairman of the Small Business Committee. I mean, if you term limit yourself, you don't get in a position of leadership. And so that's why I no longer...
And if I can explain that.
Sure, go ahead.
The reason I asked it is because I wanted it to be a
Right, I know that.
That too many people believe that you could be in there 1 or 2 terms and out and still accomplish what you're accomplishing and your answers that you just gave regarding the Finance Committee. And so what I would like to see is individuals such as yourself expound on that more. The reason that I'm here...
Well, believe me, enough people talk about it because I'm running for my 11th term. So when are you going to retire? So I don't have any plans to retire,
Uh-huh. Well, that's good.
I don't even take any medicine. None. 11th term. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Way in back. Yes.
It's been circulating a lot. I've heard it on numerous on both sides of the political party.
Okay.
That you have called, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, Mayor Galloway of Newport, and said that this is your last term and you will be retiring. I would like to clarify.
The mayor is wrong. I confronted him on that. That conversation never took place. And proof of it is I'm running for my 11th term.
I was just, I heard it from all over. And
Yeah, well, he started the rumor.
Yeah.
He was my opponent last time.
I was going to say, don't blame him.
Yeah, the best way to get rid of somebody is to start a rumor that they're retiring, but it didn't work. Yeah, appreciate the question. It's good. Let's see. Let's talk about trade in our area. Boone, Winnebago, and Ogle counties, about 340,000 people, something like that, make up the Rockford metropolitan statistical area. Those are areas that are set up by, I think it's the Department of Commerce, to say that the areas are similar, so we'll group them together as we go across the country. The Brookings Institute, about 4 months ago, came out with a study. This area exports $3.2 billion a year worth of product. It is one of the most intensive exporting areas in the country. The most intensive exporting area in the state, and I think the 22nd or 23rd most extensive exporting area in the country. That's a lot of product to be coming out of Rockford, Boone, and Ogle County. A lot of it has to do with the 90 industries, at least, that are involved in aerospace. But a lot of stuff that's manufactured in our area is exported. If you take the Chrysler plant, about, now let's see, your husband works there. Over 42% of the product at Chrysler plant in Belvedere is exported. I mean, that's almost 1 out of every 2 cars that are made in Boone County is exported. Even in a slow year, based upon last year's stats, because did they add the second shift there, Brenda? Okay. Based upon last year's product, $20 million a month of product went to Mexico. The reason for that is NAFTA, because the tariffs were lowered and eliminated for U.S. cars going into Mexico. Before NAFTA, the only car that could be sold in Mexico was a car that was made in Mexico. And so NAFTA has really helped the Rock River Valley. If you take places such as AB Apgar Ibsen over in Belvedere, there are 2 Ibsens side by side. One where they do the heat treating, the other one where they make the world's only portable vacuum heat treating machine. It's a UAW shop. They export about 95% of their product. 95%. It's really neat. It's pre-programmed into several languages. It costs about $200,000. And I said, what do you need? They said, we need a free trade agreement with Brazil, because they're trying to penetrate the market in Brazil. Talk to the folks at Regal Beloit. Regal Beloit is the last U.S.-owned manufacturer of electrical motors. The last U.S.-owned. And I said, what do you need? He said, we need a free trade agreement with Brazil because if we try to get in, it's about a 27% tariff. But the United States has always been traditionally low. Those motors come in at virtually no tariff whatsoever on it. So our congressional district is very, very heavy in the exports, even including our 3 biofuels, ethanol plants, where the DDGs, that's the product that's not used. Those are exported to China for feeding their farm, for feeding their cows and pigs and chickens. And so when you look at trade, we have a net benefit from the trade agreements. The problem with the Chinese is that the Chinese will do everything they can in order to bring as much business to China as possible at the expense of the Americans. Fellows Shredders, F-E-L-L-O-W-E-S, that's located in the suburbs, had a plant in China in a partnership. They showed up one day, they'd been locked out by their partner. And the state came up with some type of a ruse that just stripped them of a $195 million investment. It's horrible what happened to them over there. Plus they stole their intellectual property. Aqua Aerobics in Loves Park, Bob Wimmer actually wrote a letter to the Rockford newspaper. They were bidding on a project in China, and somebody over there tried to steal their intellectual property rights, and they were so stupid as to even copy their website. And so we had the people from the Chinese embassy come in the office and showed them what had happened, and ended up prevailing in the court system in China because of what happened, because of our talking to the Chinese ambassador. But how many people can make it to the office of Congressman and talk to the Chinese ambassador to bring to light a lawsuit that goes on? So the Chinese are pirating our intellectual property. They're illegally subsidizing different companies. And then they cook the currency. They do that by each day buying about $1 billion worth of U.S. dollars on the open market. So the Chinese RMB, the yuan, is undervalued by anywhere between 20 and 40%. The people that are impacted most by that imbalance, that makes their products cheaper to sell to us. It's normally the small manufacturers. And I've seen small manufacturers lose a bid to China by as little as 5 or 6%. But we're seeing something quite significant taking place You probably all know Fred Young over at let's see, Forest City Gear. And Fred has gotten back 2 or 3 contracts for grinding gears that were in China, and they came back to America because of the quality. Fred and I used to play volleyball at the Y 40 years ago. We go back a long time together. But he can tell you the stories of the Chinese manufacturing that's coming back. I was just with about 10 manufacturers that do a precision type of manufacturing, people that do a cuff link, very, very precise milling, things of that nature. And a lot of work coming back from China. The more precise the manufacturing application, the more likelihood you'll see of this manufacturing coming back from China. We still lose a lot. I still have no idea why GE moved its X-ray division from Milwaukee to China. I know that the Milwaukee senators and representatives are fighting that one also. China's wages go up by 15 to 20% a year. They're outsourcing to Vietnam, North Korea, wherever else they can find somebody to make something cheaper for them. So what we have to do with the Chinese, you have to continually keep your feet to the fire. The Senate passed a bill that says if a country manipulates its currency, it's considered to be a trade violation that could be retaliated with by countervailing duties or by tariffs. You punish somebody who does that. And the House has taken a look at it, but the Chinese are screaming unfair, etc. And what they do is you put the pressure on them, then they back off for a while. So I don't know where else we could go on these trade agreements, except when you take a look at what how our district benefits, that's why I vote for them.
When you said
Yes.
the gentleman from Forest City,
Fred Young.
he was sending work over to China?
No. It was people
Who was buying work from China?
No. People were... He has customers now who removed their manufacturing from China back to the United States. Thank you for asking that question to clarify.
I've met with some private manufacturers who that is the source of their business, is just correcting the problem
Oh yes,
of the quality.
a lot of castings.
Yeah, that has happened in China.
It is.
You were talking earlier about trade, how busy this area
Mhm.
is, and I just want to ask for some help from you.
Sure.
Remember, 78% of that trade in this area goes on rural roads, and that's our roads that it comes down. So if something comes your way, just remember.
You know what? You knew you would have a chance to get a good, it doesn't get any better than that.
It's very important.
Well, maybe you can answer a question. We've always lived on a dirt road. I mean, there are 5 houses, and it never bothered us. You always knew when someone was going by. The 5 or 6 cars that use the road each day say, oh, there's dust cloud and everything. Is it true that in Illinois, the law requires all the rural roads to be paved and of a certain dimension? Otherwise, there's a reduction in funding?
No, because down in southern Illinois, we still have gravel roads.
Okay.
So, no, there's nothing about that. As a matter of fact, as times get rough, you're going to see a lot of roads rural roads go back to gravel because we just don't have the money there to fix it.
Well, they put in the tar and chips, the township roads.
And counties.
Yeah.
They just don't have that money. Down in southern Illinois, a lot of the counties don't work. It's the townships that maintain the county roads.
Okay. Yeah, we're enjoying a paved road. It's kind of nice now,
But just remember.
Yeah, that's right. You bet. I appreciate that.
Aren't those the same complaints we had with Japan 20 years ago, though?
What's that?
Aren't those the same complaints we had with Japan 20 years ago, the complaints we have with China?
China's worse.
Firstly, because we set the price of the yen at 360.
Well, it's fixed.
And the state
Yeah.
was fixed.
Yeah.
And that gave them the advantage, but it was the United States that set that price.
Yeah, we had a lot of problems with Japan, but it's nothing compared to what we have with China now.
But right now, then, look at the inverse. You talk the great progress of Chrysler, but what is the most American-made car in the United
It's the
States?
Camry. It's the Toyota Camry, right.
Japanese car.
Well, it's Japanese owned,
Yeah.
but made here.
Made here.
Okay.
With American parts.
Go ahead, Harold, and then.
You know, we hear so much is being spent on the Defense Department. You know, how much, 1.3 trillion I heard or something's going on, you know, being spent for this war and everything else. Where is this money? I know they can't account for some of it, but that much money being spent on the past 10 years more, it seems like there ought to be some businesses in the United States making some money. You know, I think back, you know, what I heard about the Second World War, when, boy, you know, everybody was in the factories and they're turning stuff out and they're making things. Where does this money go? I mean, I know we got to be making, you know, Humvees and things and everything else, and uniforms and rifles and munitions and rockets and just all this stuff.
There are a lot of people
And there's
in Northern Illinois that are involved in making manufacturing for military application. Well, I don't know if it's our share, but I mean, because we're so heavily industrialized.
That's a good question. Is all the materials that go to the war, are they made in the United States?
No, there's that's another issue. You ever heard of the word rare earth magnets? It's neodymium iron boron. Well, these are the magnets that go into high-end motors, into really next generation electrical equipment. And these magnets are also used in rockets and guidance systems. We're dependent upon China for those. And one of the things we've been working on in a manufacturing caucus is on rare earths, to get that manufacturing of high-end magnets back to the United States. And that's a very scary area, such as the titanium, to be dependent upon the Chinese for the permanent magnets that are used in the guidance system in our rockets. That's not good. Yes.
Are there also things being bought for the war that aren't so rare that we can only get them from China, that are coming from other countries? Uniforms.
Well, do you remember the thing with the berets? Well, I stopped that. I chaired the small business committee and found out that the berets were coming from China. And I said, wait a second. You know, we have a manufacturer here that's going out of business, and then I called a hearing on it, and he just died, General Shinseki, was the chief of staff of the Army. Really great guy. I came in the office and I said, Eric, what happened? He said, well, my people to have all the berets done in time for an anniversary for the Army. I said, do you have any idea these were going to be made in China? He said, well, I don't want to give you his words. I mean, military guys sometimes get very colorful. He said, I had no idea they were going to be made in China. So we just tell the story. So he testified, and we stopped the manufacturing in China of those berets because it violated what's called, again, the Berry Amendment. If it's some certain metals or anything involving clothing or things for tents, that has to be made in America if it's used for defensive purposes.
What's the name of that money again?
B-A-R-R-Y, Berry.
And the other question I was going to ask is, we have a lot of big manufacturers like Apple. I mean, 20% of Apple, the iPad, is the value comes from being assembled in China. Those are jobs our people could do. And why isn't there something done, some way we could put a tariff on goods that our manufacturers have made in other countries to use their cheaper labor?
Well, then you get into a trade war. That happened with Smoot-Hawley in the earlier part of the last century. Whirlpool is moving back manufacturing of washing machines from China to the United States. There's some very interesting things that are happening, because China's big draw was the low wages. It's not there anymore. And with productivity increasing, wages become a decreasing component of the final product. And so with increase in productivity and an increase in the wages in China, plus the cost of fuel, it's interesting. Gasoline is high, but because of the cost of fuel, that makes transportation from China higher, and that makes more of a demand to build things here in America. And when I was with these 10 folks in Elkhorn just a few hours ago, every one of their plants could use expansion. You see, the orders are coming out of their ears. The biggest problem is they can't get skilled workers. And so this is interesting. This is very interesting. Manufacturing is coming back. The Institute for Supply Management, in the past 2 years, I think all but 2 or 3 months, it's been above 50, which means that it continues to grow. I talk to the manufacturers on a daily basis. Business is good. Orders are coming in. What's the problem? Can't get workers. In fact, one manufacturer said something astounding today. He said, what keeps me from buying a new machine tool is I don't know if I can get somebody to run it. Now you got to think about that. I mean, there's a huge disconnect. I mean,
unfortunately, the local unemployment office is running out of money to put the unemployed and re-educate them into RVC to get them.
well, there's always an issue of money, but I said, what do you guys do individually as opposed to relying upon the government? I got a call from somebody with a machine shop about 4 years ago, about 75 years old, and reminded me of my dad. Don, need some help. Okay. He said, I've got guys coming in that want to run the machines, but we can't get them trained. I called Jack Beckerer at Rock Valley College. Within 4 days, he had set up an apprenticeship program with 2 people at that shop there. We've got some marvelous resources around here. The National Association of Manufacturers, the Institute run by Emily DeRocco, who used to be at the Department of Labor for training. She's taken over 300 job training programs and distilled them down into one to get people prepared to go into manufacturing. And it's the community colleges that will continue to lead on this. I was with Mike Williams just a couple of days ago. You know, Mike, he's in charge of job training and does a marvelous job there. But there are a lot of problems that are going on when the government gets involved too heavily in job training. And I'm not criticizing it. I was in Crystal Lake about a year ago. A fellow who makes molds for insert injection, you know, with a plastic mold that may have a piece in it already and you got to build around it. Very complicated. I think he has 11 employees. 4 were young men under 30. Were you there with me, Rich? Frida was with me then. And I said, okay, how'd you get these 4 young guys? He said, well, I approached them in high school and got them interested in manufacturing. I mean, these are tool and die makers, very complicated molds. And he said, I will pay for your education at the community college as long as you pass the course. He said, and then you can take off time to go to school while you're working here. He started his own job training program. I mean, you've got, you know.
Invest in people as well as investing in the machines. If you want to invest
right.
in the machine, you got to invest in those people that are going to operate those machines. And if there could be a correlation between the technical colleges out there and the training programs out there with the local.
Well, it's already there.
Together, because that's all I'm hearing as well from
Yeah,
everywhere.
it's,
That's what we used to have when we had the Barbara Colemans, the Sunstrands. Those people were training constantly. In fact, then Rockford built up the boat tech.
Yeah.
We had the big boat tech high school, which then everybody said, no, we don't want.
Harold, the
to
problem-
We want to go to college and
well, that's,
do that. We lost all that.
and then if you went to Votech, they put you on a bus and drove you off to another school. I mean, that was the worst thing that could have happened on that. But I mean, here's the key to the economy. Manufacturing is surging in this country. The jobs are there. People are on unemployment, and they can't buy houses because you don't get enough on unemployment. Why aren't they applying for these jobs?
Because the
Okay.
government gives them so much money.
Where
that
did they go to apply? It used to be you went to Woodward Governor. I got my first job at Woodward Governor, and I was trained as a precision inspector. Now, you can't, they don't have employment offices at factories. You gotta go to temp and manpower and get sent in on a temporary.
Well, no, Woodward Governor still does in-house.
They may still, a lot of them don't.
Workforce Connection, in fact, I was going to give it to you to put a link on it. Mike Williams showed me lists of openings like this all over the Rock River Valley for jobs that are there. It's a matter of linking people into what's in there, but a lot of people have been so discouraged and have just given up. You had a comment?
Well, my comment was, I mean, when I've gone to, I've recently been unemployed, and when I went through the program, I mean, I was looking at it, it was for CNA work and things like that.
Mhm.
It was for lower wage jobs, and there wasn't any openings
Yeah.
for us to go into a manufacturing job or anything like that. The money wasn't there, so there does need to be a type of help for the small businesses. I think if they can get like some kind of rebate or something like that to help them go into the community and reach out to these individuals and say, hey, I'd like you to have an apprenticeship program or something like that.
Well, that has to be driven by the business owner.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know.
Yeah, we can't.
Well, I think they just need the skilled labor now, and I think they gotta, you know, a lot of times, but in the same breath, yeah, they have to, I think it's just coming, you know, to the middle.
But it's very difficult, even with the basic machine certification that's out there, you still need training once you get into the shop. And that's why when I talked to these guys, I said, you know, you've got to do it yourself. You've heard of the Eiger Lab. About 8 years ago, I got a hold of the dean of the School of Engineering at NIU, and Dr. Peters, who is the president of NIU. And I said, I want you guys to come over and meet the folks at Hamilton Sunstrand. So they came over and sat down. It's the first time that there had been a meeting between Hamilton Sunstrand, which has close to 2,000 engineers, and NIU School of Engineering. And so they sat down, and I understood about 40 seconds of the conversation. Then they went into engineer speak. I got lost on that. But today, NIU does contract work for Hamilton Sunstrand. They do research. And NIU is known as a school of applied engineering, not research engineering. Plus, with the nexus going on, it's a natural feeder from NIU to Hamilton Sunstrand. So we had that meeting, and then there was a meeting at Rock Valley College. And there was John Lundeen, Keith Irons, Bob Trojan, and the fellow who used to be the president at Ingersoll. I can't think of his name right now. The four of us met there with a bunch of manufacturers, and that's the day that the Eiger Lab was born. Just sat down and said, we need to do something about some sophisticated milling machines, and the Eiger Lab is, I mean, it's one of the premier research labs and incubators for small manufacturing companies today. None of that took federal legislation. I mean, you got to get creative.
Can I just say one thing?
Sure.
We're at the time, I'm sure, but I think that also conquers another issue of, instead of, today's society having to incur, back in Sunstrand, they really, and my father-in-law is 45 years veteran. He doesn't have any student loan debt to do what he does. And today, we got kids that are getting out there at 24 to, they're 28, and I met with a guy who has $100,000 in student loan debt. He was in there at Sunstrand.
And that's one of the reasons why I'm not going back to school.
Right. But at the same time, it doesn't mean it doesn't take action on both parts of it. But if it can be an agreement between the private businesses, Sunstrands, Woodwards, or whatever, and the colleges to say, look, we'll train you while you're working, and you have some sort of program put together that
they can do that.
Are taking a part of that.
If you work at any United Technologies, if you're a janitor and you want to get a degree in French literature, they'll pay for it. They put 27,000 people through college. It doesn't have to be related at all to what you're doing. That's just part of their program.
I'm thinking about a presentation I heard a month or so ago at a Beloit function, and they had a lady there from Kalamazoo, Michigan. If you live in Kalamazoo, Michigan, your child is entitled to an education, training of some sort. Why do people want to live in Kalamazoo, Michigan? Because they know their kids will get...
Somebody endowed that school district. You're looking for something like that, Mike. It's true, isn't that right? In Kalamazoo, they endowed the school district.
And they have a whole group, and that's what they do, is go out and get funds from the Sunstrands or the companies to...
Well, that was... McHenry County Community College used to have that program. Did they discontinue it, Rich? Because... But what they did was a bunch of people got together and set up a foundation. And anybody who went directly from high school to the community college was guaranteed 2 free years of college. I mean, that was the year that the enrollment jumped 45%. I mean, I was talking to a girl, she had been accepted to the University of Illinois Champaign. She said, I'll go there in my 3rd year.
I can go free here.
Well, you can go free here. I want to talk about the schools a second, Mike. There is the only federal money that comes to schools is the mandates, IDEA, which costs quite a bit of money, but it's absolutely necessary because you've seen some of these children that come in on boards. The only chance they have in life is through the IDEA program. Well, Congress, when that was passed, was supposed to pay, I think it's 40% of the cost, and it's always come short. I've always voted for saying, look, if you're going to have that program, and you promise to pay for it, then that's an obligation by the federal government to pay for it. That's where federal funding should go, because that's a direct shot, because the government set up the program, and the government should pay for it. The president's stimulus says, look, he said, let's put the school teachers back to work, but you do that by incurring more debt. I mean, that's the stimulus from before. The school teachers go back to work when more people are working. Ever since I've been in Congress, I've always concentrated on job creation. Why? If you're from Rockford, Illinois, you better. We always lead the nation in unemployment. In fact, my co-chair of the manufacturing caucus, Tim Ryan, is from Youngstown, Ohio. It's Rockford, Illinois, and Youngstown, Ohio. That went back and forth on who's ahead of employment. That's why we get along so well, because we have the same background on it. But we put together that program to give you an idea of the things that I work on personally, especially involving manufacturing. I just believe that manufacturing is the key. And so now we're going into the phase where the work is here, but we can't get the people trained. At least we've identified what that problem is. Are we out of time, Rich? Okay.
Just one real quick question.
Go ahead.
We hear so much about TARP. And I was amazed at how many companies and banks and so on and so forth, but the multitude of businesses that got that money. How many or what percentage has not paid it back?
I'm not sure, but there are a couple of local banks that actually took the TARP money for the intended purpose. They didn't need the money. They needed to increase liquidity. And they're here in the northern part of Winnebago County. But I voted against TARP because we were told...
There was no regulation in it.
Well, the point is, we were told Treasury wanted $787 billion. It was a one-page bill. It said the Secretary of Treasury shall have the authority to spend $787 billion of taxpayers' money, and Congress and the courts could have no oversight. You're going to be crazy to vote for something like that. That was the bill. But that was, you talk about bipartisanship. And I've got to finish on this note because it's one of the greatest stories that I've ever, we'll see it, Kurt, be good. One of the greatest stories that I've ever seen with regard to bipartisanship. I'm pretty conservative and opposed to TARP.
Good. Okay.
Well, and so did the Progressive Caucus. This is Dennis Kucinich, I mean, so you have very, very liberal and the very conservatives. Just as a matter of principle, we didn't think this was good. And for the first time in Congress, we had meetings with people on the other side of the party because it became a policy issue and not a party issue. And Brad Sherman from California, a good friend of mine, very, very liberal, he had some of the best research. And so we used his research on it. And then we brought in outside speakers and had joint meetings. To me, it was one of the finest hours that I've seen Congress really work together. But no, the first one failed. The first one failed. Then some people decided to change their minds on it. But what had happened was policy reigned over party. Are you with me? Mm-hmm. And this was extraordinary. That's the way it should be. And that's the way we do on the Manufacturing Caucus. We never talk about party issues. We talk about workforce development and labor issues, but we don't talk about issues involving labor unions because that's divisive. But we get to the same point because we work with labor unions and others on workforce development. We accomplish the same goal, but we stay away from the hot politics of it. Okay, well, you guys have been very kind. Appreciate your coming. How's business doing, Scott?
It's pretty good. I think 2010 was the best year I ever had.
Is that right? We selling pickup trucks?
Yeah.
That's those pickups. The farmer's doing fine. Yeah, when you have $8 corn, a lot of pickup trucks are sold, aren't they?
Yeah. There's not as many farmers as people think. A lot of the farmers have all sorts of land out there.
Yeah.
It's not the little amount of crop that they
Yeah.
So,
it's good.
But,
That's good.
But, I mean, cutting expenses was big.
And so you like the car I drove in, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Escape, right.
Yep.
Okay.
I just want to take a minute and thank the township for hosting this.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Thank you guys.
Make sure that we mention that, so
Thank you.
And thank you, Congressman, for coming
Well,
and
thank you.
our community.
I appreciate it.
All right.
What's that?
I just want to ask you, people within Occupy Rockford have sent via email and a couple of phone calls asking if you would please come out and hear us or have a conference call with us.
If you want to make an appointment to come in the office, I've seen the Move On Hour people before.
It's not
Well, there are people involved in that, but I mean, but I'll take your word for it, Art. Yeah, you just call the office.
Over 60 emails and we've called and I've been hung up on. Personally, I was hung up on. I don't know if it was phones dropping calls, but I have been hung up on. And there's the question that I've been getting texts to ask you is, will you please listen to us? We're over 200 people strong and we want...
All you have to do is call Rich. I mean, we talk to people there all the time.
Okay, we just...
It's always, you and the Tea Party people are upset for the same reason the rest of Americans are.
Oh, we
and that is,
we're not leftists, please.
No, I'm just saying that people don't understand what's going on. People are very upset with what's going on in America. And oftentimes this is the only way that people can express that. I mean, believe me, I went to college in Washington, D.C., and I picketed several times. carried signs, you know, that was just part of First Amendment and everything on it. And the Occupy Rockford people had been exquisitely polite. Some of the people in the other cities have not. And I don't think those are people that think like you. I think those are real troublemakers that infiltrate any group just for the opportunity to get in there and cause trouble.
Because we realize that our message affects our neighbors. That's
Okay. But talk to Rich, that's fine. Okay. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You gotta keep doing that. Thanks.